Hi, Skryah here with an update on my sick Invoker endgame build. So, my editor has started making builds and loves PoE 2. This is an update for the Invoker build. So this is a final update for the build if you are looking for like an entry level thing. He also has a leveling version up, so go check that out and we'll have a link in the description for that. But yeah, I hope you guys are enjoying my editor's builds and yeah, enjoy.
Hi, Resident Invoker went straight here to update the Ice Strike Monk for probably the final time this league. If you're ever tired of Dead Eyes and other projectile builds just annihilating the screen and going really fast, well, in this build you will become the projectile. You will be darting around, you will be shattering screens, your heralds will chain together to clear some screens, you will deal lots of damage, you will be really fast, you will be dashing around a lot with Ice Strike. This build is just a gem to play. It's even more fun than in 0.1. Even though the damage is not as high as back then because, you know, hand wisdom in action was really busted. Now, before I get into it, yes, this build will be expensive. You will need at least a starting unique called the Thunderfist. I will get more into it later. And to get to this level of performance, yes, you will be needing to spend a lot. This is an endgame build. This is for farming irradiated and +1 whatever T15 maps and above. This is for farming the highest level of Zesh. This can do Arbiter and Uber Arbiter, whatever the fuck that means. I've cleared the whole game of this build, and even though I have some potential upgrades that I can still do, I think this is enough for me. This build is really fun as it is. I think it is worth sharing, even though it takes quite a bit to get to this stage, and even though it might be prohibitive for some of you. Now, this entire build is centered around Thunderfist. And what Thunderfist does is, I will explain it here first because there's a lot of doubts around this glove. A lot of people think it's not worth using, it's better to use a rare. I will talk in depth about this, and I'll do that right now. So even though this glove might seem underwhelming at first, it has three really good things. One, it has a lot of lightning damage, flat to your unarmed melee hits, which, you know, you could get in other gloves, but that's fine. It also has a lot of base melee crit hit chance, which is great, but it's also not a big deal because of the bonuses that you get from Hollow Palm, that you just basically get that. However, where it really shines is it gives you Crackling Palm. And Crackling Palm is not like a huge deal or anything, it seems at first. However, there's one main thing that it enables. It enables us to use Blind as a support gem. So what this does is this will blind enemies on hit guaranteed, and no questions asked, they will just be blind. And on top of adding just another defensive layer on top of what we already have, which I will cover later, it enables us to use blindside support on our damage gems. So what this does is a multiplier on top of our crit damage bonus, which is already a multiplier. So you're multiplying a multiplier with this, not just on your bonus, but also on your chance to critically hit. This support gem is really good, and it's just a no-brainer. On top of that, it enables these nodes on the tree, distract the target, and the nodes leading up to it, which just will help us cap our crit. Really high crit chance with this build, which is great. I've tried having some pretty good unarmed gloves. I will put the footage here in the background so you can see. So don't take it from me, take it from the footage from behind. The damage is very, very similar. However, these are way smoother to set up, and I think it just caps out higher. And also, you get like cool fucking lightning effects. Who doesn't want that? It's cool. I prefer this version. Sure, you can go with rare gloves, and if that works better for you, that's fine. There's so much about this build that are tiny little details that we can't really know for sure, because Path of Building is not super optimized for PoE 2 yet. If it works for you with rare gloves, that's great. Same for support gems. There's just so many options that we have. It's almost impossible to find what the best one is right now, even though I've done a lot of testing. Another thing that I want to talk about before we get into it, and part of what makes this build expensive, is Rakiata's Flow. This is a lineage support gem. It just has been added this league. What it does is will treat enemy elemental resistances as inverted. So if a monster has 75 lightning resistance, it now counts as having -75, which is a huge, huge, huge damage boost. However, this is very expensive. This is like 20-something plus divines. It's unreasonable to put this on every single skill of your arsenal that deals damage. So that is why we do have to spec into Sunder My Enemies, because not just because of that, but it does two things. One, it makes it so that for skills that are an Ice Strike that are supported by Rakiatas, this will just make the enemy resistances 0, right? So if they're above 0% resistances, this will just treat them as 0. So it's a good damage boost, means we don't have to invest anything, no skills, no points into lowering enemy resistances or exposure or anything like that. This is just good. What it also does is that some monsters might have really low resistances or even negative at some points, which is a contention point for using Rakiatas. So what this does is it just eliminates those cases and it will just be treating them as 0, and then if they are positive, Rakiata's flow will just make them negative. And yes, this does not invalidate the negative resistances because it only ignores non-negative. It says right there, the fourth word. So don't worry about that. Rakiata's flow and Sunder My Enemies should work together. And Rakiata's flow is just a huge damage increase. It's great. It's expensive though. I don't think it's necessary for you to use it. You can just stick with Sunder My Enemies and then put another support gem in place of Rakiata's flow. I've talked about the Ascendancies in a previous leveling video, but I'll talk about them again in this one because I've made some changes. So we do really need Lead Me Through Grace because this is just going to enable us to have a shitload of spirit, to have as many auras as we want. We are more limited by gem slots than we are by spirit, which is great because there's lots of really good auras that have been added. Here is the only real choice that you have. You can go with I Am the Thunder, or you can go with And I Shall Rage, so you would not have Thunder, you would have Unbound Avatar instead. It's up to you. It's, to me, the choice is between having consistent damage from I Am the Thunder or having like huge burst with And I Shall Rage. So if I was doing a lot of bossing, I would just spec into And I Shall Rage to get Unbound Avatar to just delete bosses out of existence. Disclaimer with that though is that every single clip that you're seeing here, so all the boss skills and stuff, I am not using Unbound Avatar because I'm honestly just too lazy to keep respecking. So I've just kept I Am the Thunder on all the time, and it's great. And then, as I said earlier, you do need Sunder My Enemies to just leverage the penetration that all of your other skills that aren't supported by Rakiatas have. So now that we've gone through the Ascendancies, let's talk about the skills a little bit, because there's a lot to cover here, because we just have so many auras and there's so many choices in the support gems. So first of all, with Ice Strike, I have it supported by Overextend, which is just more critical damage bonus, which is great. So I'm up to, where does it even say? I'm up to 420 critical damage bonus. That's a cool number. You have Rage 3 to just give you a lot of attack speed and to hit capped Rage immediately. So what Rage does, let's just click here. It just gives you more attack damage for everything that you do. So it works with other skills and stuff, and it goes up to 30% more damage. That's great. You get to max Rage really, really fast, and you just maintain it always. And we have other Rage interactions that I'll cover later. I have Elemental Armament, and I have Blindside. These are just no-brainer. I've talked about Blindside before, and I have Rakiata's Overflow. If I didn't have Rakiata's Overflow, and if you don't, then you can just use Close Combat. You can use Ice Infusion, or Cold Infusion. It's completely whatever. Just pick another damage support and just put it in, and it'll be fine. Now for Crackling Palm, I have Elemental Focus to just make it do more damage. Calling Strike to make it call, 10% against rares and uniques at 5%. However, you get 20% increased Calling Strike threshold after calling with it, so that's pretty cool. You get Blind 2 with extra effect because it's the second one, and I have Soul Drain here. Doesn't really seem to do much, but it's whatever. Now, another really important one for clear is Shattering Palm. I've done a lot of testing for Shattering Palm, and this is what I landed on. There's like endless support gems that you can use on all of these things, and Shattering Support is one where you have so many options that it gets really hard to decide which one's best. I've done a lot of testing over the last 2-3 days, and this is the loadout that I prefer. So I'm sticking with Ancestral Call 2 to make it spread over 3 targets instead, to makes it overlap a little bit. I have Pinpoint Critical so that it crits more often. I have Ambush so that it doubles the crit chance against things that are on full life. So whenever you do explode from the targets that you killed from the first cast, that explosion will just have crit cap. That's it, no questions asked, just crit cap. And you also have Magnified Area to make it bigger, and Elemental Armament to make it do more damage. Tempest Bell, I have Overabundance 2, just to be able to summon 2 bells. Close Combat for more damage, Heft for more damage, Rage Forge, which is great. So whenever you're hitting with your Ice Strikes, you're generating a little shitload of rage. You put this down, it consumes a little bit, you immediately go back to full, and now this does 30% more damage. It's great. Sorry, it does 35% more damage. And then I have Ambrosia here. We don't really need mana flasks for this build ever, so this is just some completely free damages, extra lightning damage. And it's just a lot more flat damage, which is something that Bell doesn't usually get to have, so this is great. I like Ambrosia a lot. Now, these two upcoming ones are very important because there's some synergy here, and this is worth really talking about. So the reason that you can see in the background footage the heralds just chaining off of each other and leaving chilled ground, leaving shocked ground, and all of that is because of a certain support gem loadout that enables this. So the first one on Herald of Ice is Shock and Shock Conduction. And because it shocks, it will enable Herald of Thunder to proc off of that, and they will then chain together. But to make it happen, you need freeze support on your Herald of Thunder for that to happen. I also have pinpoint critical on here to make it deal more damage, and ambush also on Herald of Ice to make it just one-shot things by itself, because it'll have basically capped crit at things that are on full life, and it just deals a shitload of damage, and it's great. So to continue on Herald of Ice, I have Overreach to make it have more AoE, and just Elemental Armament to make it deal more damage, and then ambush at the end. On Herald of Thunder, you get Living Lightning, which are just some little balls of lightning that follow you and seek enemies on their own, which is great. It also will just reveal enemies that I sometimes don't see by just showing their HP bars when enemies kind of sometimes blend in the background. Stuff like that is pretty decent. Lightning Mastery to get it more levels. Elemental Armament for the more damage and pinpoint critical. And then you need Freeze for the interaction that I spoke about earlier. Combat Frenzy is needed to just enable us to get power charges for charge staff. It's not super important. I'll talk about charge staff in just a moment. But you do need this. This is the only way for us to get power charges on bosses and during clear. It's the only smooth way of doing it. And you get charge profusion to sometimes just get extra charges a little bit faster. So charge staff. I have a lot to say on this, but I will keep it short. I don't really use charge staff ever when mapping, but that is only really possible when you have enough damage to enable you to do that. What charge staff does is it gives you ranged attacks when you spend power charges to buff yourself. But what that means is that you will be losing out on the dashes from Ice Strike, because you will instead be put at the max range of these ranged attacks, and your character will not be teleported to the next target like it would normally be. So if you have enough damage, I just wouldn't use charge staff ever when mapping, only for bosses, or if you really need to kill like an abyss monster that's really tanky for some reason. Only really use it for bosses. You just don't need it for clear. It cuts a bit of your mobility, and it does look really cool though, I'll give you that. Supported by Prolonged Duration, Lightning Attunement, Close Combat, and Elemental Armament. For the remaining aura, I just have Ghost Dance. It's a no-brainer for defense. Ghost Dance is insane. It's just a huge layer of defense because we don't have a way of like regenerating our ES that much or even leeching it. There's only one source of ES leech in the game, and it's only enabled by Huntress, and we don't have that. So Ghost Dance is our way of like just buffering our life constantly in combat when mapping. This is just a complete staple. And now Trinity is amazing, but it's definitely last in priority because you need a lot of spirit to be able to run Trinity. So this will hinge a lot on how good your body armor is. You need to have a body armor with lots of stats to get enough spirit to run it, and then you just put any kind of elemental mastery on it because it has all the tags for just +1 levels. If you don't have enough spirit for Trinity, but you still have some left over, I would consider running Charge Regulation to just help cap out your crit while you can, and it's only 30 spirit as opposed to 100 on this. There's an angle here that we can enable the fire damage from here, but for now, I'm only sticking with lightning and cold damage to buff and get resonance from this. It's just a crazy aura that gives lots of more elemental damage and gives us lots of skill speed. Okay, now to talk about gear. Gear is quite easy on this build because, well, you just straight up do not have a weapon. So that's a lot of currency that you do not have to spend, and you just can put it everywhere else. Like I said earlier, to enable this build though, you do need Thunderfist. It's a complete must for this build. You just can't do the build without Thunderfist the way I have it set up. Sure, you can play a very similar build without Thunderfist and just use Rare Gloves instead. I think Thunderfist is better. It's great, it looks great, and it's just a cool unique. Now, before I get into the rest of the gear, I will have to explain how Hollow Palm works. So Hollow Palm, what it does is it gives you attack speed, physical damage, and crit based on your gear. So the physical damage you get is based off skill level, which means that you want to get skill level as much as possible everywhere. There's only 3 sources for you to get this. If we don't get it on a weapon, there will be a 4th, but obviously we don't use a weapon, so never mind about that. We do get more attack speed per evasion rating, and we do get the base crit hit chance for ES. So that means that we want as much energy shield and evasion on our gear as possible. However, a couple choices here. One of them is because of this node here, Subterfuge Mask. You have a choice between getting a helmet that is hybrid the way I have it, which means that this will give you attack speed and crit. Or you can go for a pure energy shield helmet to get you more crit and get you more evasion, which makes you a little bit more defensive, because you will get more evasion in general because of Subterfuge Mask. However, you will be missing out on some attack speed. So your mileage may vary. I think it's completely fine to use either ES or a hybrid one. I've tested both. I prefer using a hybrid. But with the latest upgrades and stuff, I'd probably be fine using a pure ES one. It's up to you. Just use whatever you can get, whatever your budget can afford. So for your body armor and for your boots, it will be very, very similar. The only thing you want, we do not care about life whatsoever. Life is completely useless. We only want as much evasion rating and as energy shield as we want. That's the only thing we care about. That number just needs to go up, especially on the body armor to give us more spirit. We just want that number to go up. Same thing in the boots, however you want movement speed here. You can also get boots that have increased effective socketed items and then put movement speed talismans on it. That's great too. I really don't feel like this build needs more movement speed, but you know, if you really want to be as fast as humanly possible, go ahead and do that if you want. It's very expensive to get boots like this. You can get even better ones. Again, you could be spending like 100 events per slot, and this build would be like 5-10 times better. But yeah. Now, when I mentioned level 2 melee skills giving us damage, our Amulet is the prime position for us to get that. You can get up to +3 of all melee level skills here. It's great. This is where we will be getting a lot of base damage for our skills. This comes from here. But getting an Amulet like this, it can be pretty expensive because the Amulet is a pretty stressed spot over here. Because we want levels, we want resists, ideally we want some energy shield, and a couple luxury stats that we want on here is increased global defenses that comes from a perfect essence. And also we probably would like some crit damage bonus to make us even deal more damage. If you can get all that, it'll be like an insane GG Amulet, but you could do that if you want. For belt, I'm just going with the rare belt so far. For now, I can talk about possible upgrades later, but for now, I just need a belt with resists. The life on it is good. I wouldn't stress too much about the life, it's not that important, but we just really want resists to help us fill us out and get some chaos res. However, the ring slot is very interesting because there's lots of choices here. So if you don't want to drop life or whatever, you can have life on your rings. However, I've gone for rings that only have damage and resistances. This one is not even catalyzed to full yet, but however, I just want loads of resistance so I can ease up on my other slots. I want loads of base flat damage to my attacks to make me deal a lot more damage, because that's hard to get in this build since we don't have a weapon. And most importantly, which is what I have here on this right ring, we need leech on this ring. We need leech as mana. This is the only way, because you can see in the tree, there is no mana nodes anywhere whatsoever because we just straight up do not need it. A single mana leech roll here on a ring will take care of all the mana issues, and then we take Walker of the Wilds to make our elemental damage leech instead of the physical damage. So this completely solves any mana issues. I even anoint Barbaric Strength, which makes us consume more mana. It consumes 10% more mana on skills. And it's completely fine, no many issues whatsoever ever. Now, a couple honorable mentions for the gear is the charm slot. This silver charm, I think every single build in the game should have this. This is crazy, especially because of the current state of chilled ground and temp chains map and all of that. Slowing you down is super annoying. This just turns chilled ground into speed cupcakes. Yeah, you see that fucking chilled ground floor over there? It doesn't matter anymore. It's just a speed cupcake. You walk over it, not only are you unaffected by it because of the implicit, it makes you faster by giving you onslaught, which is 20% skill speed and 10% MS. It just makes you faster, and it's great. Every build should have it. Chilled ground sucks. This completely negates it. If you're killing enough, it's great. Now, another one on the similar vein, but not as much, is the Nascent Hope. So this is just a thawing charm to make you immune to freeze, and it just starts your energy shield recharge, which is not something that we can usually get in combat ever in this build. So this is just good. You do need to be frozen for it to activate, so it doesn't happen that often. But when you do, when you're in trouble, especially in abysses, this is great. It's very good. This is our only source of freeze immunity, so you need to get one thawing charm anywhere. It might as well be a Nascent Hope. And then the last note on gear is that you do want percent of recovery applied instantly on both your flasks, so that if you're ever in trouble, you just mash your flasks, and that's how you get into trouble, and that's how you get mana instantly if for some reason you fail to leech. Because if you do fail to leech and you go to 0 mana, you're kind of shit out of luck, because this costs 97 mana and we have 650, and we attack almost like 8 or 9 times per second. So if you're not leeching, you cannot recover mana without your flask, so it's pretty important to have them. So the last bit about gear is your jewels. Jewels are extremely important because we don't have a lot of sources of crit damage bonus, and also a completely raw energy shield on the tree, because we're kind of far from the better nodes over there. The main 2 stats that we want on jewels, on rare jewels that is we want maximum energy shield and we want crit damage bonus, as close to 20% as possible. And then you just want the 3rd and 4th stat that are relevant. I have AoE on this one, and I have elemental damage on this one. They're only 3 stat jewels. They're already expensive enough because the rolls are quite high. You want stuff like cold damage, elemental damage, AoE, crit chance, I believe, would also roll on this. Not crit chance to spells, because these are sapphires, not emeralds. Something like that. But the top 2 stats, maximum ES and crit damage bonus for sure. Now that I've just talked about jewels, I can talk about the passive tree. Not much has changed since the leveling video. It's pretty similar. Like I said earlier, just fill it out with these blind nodes over here. Get some attack damage from over here. If you're somehow having issues with mana leech, you can get manifold method for just 3 points over here to get you more mana leech per second. It's good. Some evasion nodes over here to help out with defenses. Some more melee strike range over here. This cluster is quite good. But the only thing of note that I think is quite important to mention is abasement. So these 3 nodes, what they do is they will give a stun threshold based on our maximum ES. This is really good because we have quite a bit of ES. And ever since picking these 3 nodes, I have never gotten stunned ever again. Not from being surrounded by 30, 40, 50 monsters. Not that happens too often because we clear so fast, but still, never got stunned again. It's great. Speaking of defenses, this is definitely a point I want to talk about because I would say this is an adequately defensive build. But you know, this is not a 100k armor kind of warrior. This is definitely not like a 20,000 energy shield lich or anything of the sort. I have a measly 4,000-ish energy shield with some life underneath, and I have around 60% evasion. And on top of that, I have no deflection. So deflection is in a rough spot because for you to even be close to capping, you need to have this energizing deflection wheel leading up to it to get deflection based on your evasion rating, and you need to have trained deflection, this wheel down here. Without that, and having a deflection based on evasion rating roll on boots or chest, which will cost you like upwards of like 20-30 divines for like a good chest with a deflection on top, same for boots. It's just not realistic to ever get it. However, and on top of that, I don't think deflection really synergizes that well, because when we do get hit, we just have ghost shrouds on top to replenish our energy shield, and that's just better than taking less damage when you do get hit, because we don't get hit that often. I'm okay with my decision of just not having any deflection investment. And even while mapping in like as difficult maps as I can make it, even during Delirium, even during really fucky abysses, or even abyss maps that are really fucked with like abyss modifiers on top of your maps, it's been completely fine, no defensive problems whatsoever. However, I will say one thing. The only defensive hole in this build, but I think this is true for most builds in the game that aren't abusing like Essentia Sanguis on Huntress or being like a Giga ES Lich, is degens and debuffs and stuff like that. That will shred you, because there's just no good way of recovering life while you're taking it. And removing most debuffs, removing ignite is difficult, removing poison is difficult. Some floor effects from Abyss aren't either. They're not poison, they're not bleed, they're not ignite, they're just straight fire damage or just straight chaos damage. And in this game, it's really, really hard to mitigate that. That is the one defensive hole. I kind of just rely on not standing on it, which easier said than done. However, at least this build is kind of like visually clear. You can see the floor very easily, or at least I feel like so. The floor is fine to see. I can see what's going on and not standing things. If I really need a breather and I've run out of ES and I don't have ghost shrouds, and I can just back away and just not fight for like a couple seconds, let my ES recharge and then get back in there and kill things. The one painful thing that happens in combat is when you get a rare abyss monster with Undying Will. It's the worst fucking mod in the game. It just might just kill you and you don't even know which of the rare monsters has Undying Will, and everything takes some damage. You cannot leech, you cannot recover anything, and it's really bad, and you just have to back off and hope you don't die. I wanted to just be really open about the defenses and how it works. Now, the last thing to talk about is just possible upgrades for this build. There's quite a lot of avenues to make this better. Again, I could spend like another 1 or 2 weeks just farming and making this build better for any reason that you want, because like the content is actually quite easy. You don't really need that, but possible upgrades for this would be getting even better rings with more flat damage on them. I would like some fire damage as well, to then put fire infusion on Crackling Palm and make it deal mostly fire damage to enable a third element on Trinity for even more damage. I would want a unique belt. There's 2 options here. You either go Ingenuity to make your rings even pop off harder, which I might go for still, I'm not sure. Or you can go Darkness Enthroned if you're extremely rich and you get a top roll Darkness Enthroned, and then you slap 2 attack speed talismans on them that are like I think like 5 or 6 divines each, you can do that. Other avenues would be lineage supports for auras. So for example, Trinity can take Dialis to give it +2 levels, which is quite expensive. You could take you could take Corrupted Thunderfists for 2 slots, or for like a good implicit. That would be expensive, but probably quite worth it. Again, you could get boots that just have more movement speed if you feel like you're not fucking fast enough for some damn reason. And then just higher numbers on your things, and you know, you can always get more evasion or ES on your chest. You can get that on boots and helmet. Again, you could get crit damage bonus on your amulet. There's still lots of ways to upgrade. You can get the unique jewel called the Megalomaniac, instead of a rare jewel, to give you 2, I think it's notables, to give you 2 notables from the tree. There's some really good notables that you can get. You can get, if you have a mirror laying around, you could get a Prism of Belief for +3 Ice Strike gems. There's only 2 in the game right now, and they cost a mirror rich, so if you're really rich, or you get really lucky, you can get that. And the last bit for anointing, I've gone with Barbaric Strength because it's pretty good. Don't really have struggle with mana, and there's just a lot of crit damage bonus. Before that, I had Overwhelming Strike, which is cheap. It's crit bonus, stun buildup. It's great. This one, if you're not fully invested into crit yet, if your crit is not capped yet, this will help you cap your crit, and on top of that, you get 40% heli damage, which is great. We don't get many increases in this build, so this is great. So I think I've covered everything now. I'm really happy with this build. This is even more fun than what it was in 0.1. Because you're faster, you attack faster, damage is lower, but who cares? Can already do the highest level Zest, can already do Delirium and Simulacrum. I've already done Uber Arbiter on this build a couple days ago. Whether that fight is an Uber or not, I can tell the difference from normal Arbiter, so kind of disappointed on that, but I did that with this build fairly easily. It feels pretty optimized by now. I'm sure there's other optimizations you can do. Not 100% sure if this is the best version of a monk that you can play, or an Ice Strike that you can play. So look at other people's builds if you want to have more ideas. This is just my take on it. This is what I've landed on. I've been having a lot of fun on this build. Probably my favorite Path of Exile build ever, even considering like multi-myriad builds that I've played in PoE 1. Or this has just been the most fun one. I absolutely love the combat in this game, and I love this build and how it plays, and I hope you do too. And thank you for watching, and I hope that helped. And I hope you're okay with me making these videos here on the Ziz channel that I've been working with for so many years now. And yeah, try to play monk less than I do, if I guess. Bye.
And thanks for watching the video. Sub if you like it, but more importantly, try to die less than my editor does.